Okay, like Jessica said, thanks for everyone joining our special session today. We're going to go over workflow versioning. That's new, and I'm sure some of us have already been tripped up by that because it can be something you don't know to do, right? And you're like, why isn't my workflow working? So that's our first thing we're going to cover, and then we're going to jump into a few changes with the ticketing, specifically the ticket details section, and then ticket highlights. So those are our three things we're going to cover today. And with that being said, we're going to jump right into it. I have just this demo project I created. Since the state fair is coming up, it's state fair themed. It's just like it's not a great form. I wouldn't recommend using it, but just some data that we can pull into a ticket for a demo. With that being said, we're going to jump into our workflows tab. And I already have this pre-built. This is one that a ticket is being created. But something you might notice now and I'll zoom in here, that was different than before is there's a publish button up here in the top right-hand corner. And we've all been through the publishing a survey process. We know that that's, for your live link to show your changes, you have to publish. And there's a similar change that's happened with workflows recently. Previously, you would come into the email task, you could add, an edit here. Instead of hi state fair team, you could say hi and pipe in, the first name. And then that's immediately going to go into production, right? You save it, boom, that's going to the live link. That's not the case anymore. You have to click publish. Even when you're testing, let me duplicate my tab up here so you can see what I mean. Even when you're doing preview now, let me go back to my survey. If you're previewing and testing workflows, you'll want it to be published for those changes to even go through on your preview test. And with that being said, I also want to show you a few tricks that you can use to see what version you're on and how to kind of investigate, especially as you're doing like multiple people working on it. And you're like, whoa, what version? Had someone else made a change? It's kind of easy to be like, where are we at? Even be afraid to click the publish button, right? So there's kind of two sections that can kind of help you keep track of those changes. The first one that I like to do, is this little versions button. It looks like a clock going backwards. So if you click here, you can see all your versions. And if you click the three dots on the right and then go to edit details, you can see the description that you put in on what you did. So this one, I turned on the conditions for ticket details. If I go back to this version, oops, and you can see I accidentally clicked on it. Should I be nervous? Is it reverted? No, you're not reverted if you click on it. I've done that a few times. It does scare me. It's just now it's showing me that version, right? And the only time you actually revert to an old version is if you click replace current draft. So even if you click on version 4, you haven't ruined everything. You haven't switched back to the old version. You're still good. And it will tell you this is a read-only view. You are currently viewing version 4. So it doesn't let you make a mistake there. I feel like there's 2 clicks you have to make. You can switch and then it will make you confirm before going back. So don't be too tiptoeing around because it will ask you before you officially revert back to an old version. And one more point I do want to make is when you look at the edit details, this is a personal preference. I would love to hear how other people are doing this. This is a new feature. I usually leave the version name be because the version name will show in this top upper right-hand corner. Sorry if you can see my mouse up here, kind of where my browser is. If you do a long description of what you changed, sometimes that gets confusing. And so I put whatever I did in the description notes because I can be as descriptive as I want, right? If I made 12 different changes, it's just a little bit better to view that in the description than it is to view it in the version name because that's going to show as a title. So that's just a personal preference that I like to do. And if you don't make the description note, and I'll show you where that pops up really quick. So if you I'm going to go to my current draft. I think the only thing I've changed here is I piped this text in here. But once I click publish, the description's empty, right? And sometimes it's easy to not, dot your I's and cross your T's and just click publish and move on. But let's say you want to go back. It's really tricky to know what change you made. So I would, as a best practice, say changed email description to piped or first name piped text. Now, if I publish that, go to my versions and see this is my active version here. Click on edit details. Now I see, oh yeah, that's the version I wanted to be on. So that can be helpful. The next thing that can be really helpful when looking at your version history is looking at this revision history button. This is also new. The one thing I do like about the revision history, you can see like, okay, we published version 6. I edited the task. Like some of these, right? If you're not making those description notes, this isn't enough detail sometimes for me to remember what changes I'm making. Like it can be helpful because it does give the date timestamp. And you can also filter over here. You can search like which user. I mean, I'm the only person who's touched this. So you can, this is good if you want to like filter down if there's been like hundreds of changes, right? And you don't want to click one by one through version history. This can be a good way to filter down. Another different view you'll get from this revision history page is if you click the 3 dots and then go to view details. I mean, no one likes the way this looks, right? I'm sure none of us are like great coders, but you can come in here and it will show what you changed. This is the old version in red, and then in green, this is the new, right? So you kind of have to like look at both versions and say, okay, what's the difference here, right? So this can be helpful if you want to get in the nitty gritty of it. But personally, I prefer just leaving my own description, right? That's easier than looking through some of this. Let's see, some of these notes. I wanted to find one that was a little more clear. Let's see, view details. I think this might, oh, this is saying it's not published. So that was the change. It was not published and now it is published. So sometimes if you make like actual revisions to your email, then it will show what email, like what changes you made. If you added text or you fixed your grammar, it will show that here. So those are some high level things with the workflow editor. I think it's a great tool. I think it's helpful so that you actually have a log of what's being changed. I think that's probably the #1 plus of what's come from this change, especially if you have multiple people working on the project. You're like, well, I didn't know they came in here and made that change, right? And then we have problems. But it is one more step, I would say, is coming in and clicking the publish button. One last thing I would say, like, if you come into your draft version, you can make edits. Sometimes you don't realize you're clicked on your active version and you would want to make edits. Luckily, it tells you this is a read only. It says any edits you make will not be saved. But I do want to call that out. Just make sure you're in the editing version or the draft version if you want to make edits. I would hate for you to go through and make a list of all these edits you want to make and none of them save because you were in the draft version. Luckily, it gives you some heads up. Okay, that's kind of high level for the workflow versioning. Now we're going to jump into some of the ticketing changes that have been made.
Brooke, can I add 2 comments to that?
Yes, please.
Yes, while you get ready for that. When you hear the word publish, we always think we have to go through the review and approval process. I just want to emphasize this particular publish within the workflow does not need to be sent to the quality security team. This is just to activate is how I would prefer they use in this case because we use the publish and review, but it's the same thing. So not something, that same publish is not your survey publish. I just want to be very clear on that. The other question, if you have full edit rights to the survey, some of you are moving yours to a service account. We've tested this. You can click publish as well as long as you have full edit rights to the survey. So there is no limitation, no back and forth with our team. This is just one. It's very important that you know this because we've had some true tickets regarding this and confusion. So this is new to all of us. So again, but you can see the benefits of this. But yeah, just want to kind of point out some Iowa things regarding this. So go for it, Brooke, back to you. Yep.
Yeah, no, that's a great call out. Don't want to like discourage anyone from using it because you think you have to loop in more teams. So great call out there. Okay, next we're going to jump into, oh, and I do have one more thing now that we're going into ticketing. So you can see this ticketing task. This is a new kind of warning that wasn't there before this workflow versioning. It says this task does not fully support workflow versioning. You're like, oh, what does that mean? So there's 2 tasks within when you're creating like workflows. It's tickets and anything to do with like an API or a web service. that whatever changes you make in tickets or web service, they immediately get like brought to like the publish link. You don't have to click publish for these changes to be live. So just keep that in mind. Those are the two types of tasks that I think it's because they're a little more complex. Like they just immediately get put into production. But I think that's worth noting. So if you make a change in your tickets, know that that's something that will go live. A way around that, if you do need to do some testing or like you don't want that push to production, is I would turn off your workflow. I would turn it off while you make the edits. It does make it tricky, right? If the survey's already into production to test it, right? Because there's like, okay, I'm gonna hurry and turn it on while I do my one test and then turn it back off. So I would say anything with a ticketing system, be really clear to test it before it goes live. Because once you want to make changes afterwards, it's just not as clear cut. So that your actual people taking your forms aren't seeing the changes.